Hello, this is Chris and Rick Talk Guitars, and today's topic is many guitars. Right,
Many,
Chris?
many guitars.
A problem that plagues probably most guitarists, wouldn't you say?
A lot of guitarists. It's a great problem to have. It's a first world problem, but
I mean, I kind of envy the person that has one guitar that's their main guitar, and they played it their whole lives, and they don't feel the need to buy another guitar. But most guitar players, I think, whether you have a couple or not, there always something will always come along that you probably want, right? Like, yeah, and you'll get the wants.
I mean, yeah, I love the idea of the guitar player who gets one guitar, carries it in a gunny sack, and creates a fortune with it. But in the 2020s and beyond, or probably a lot earlier than that. I mean, this whole like collecting of guitars, whether you like it or not, if you stick with the guitar, you end up amassing a small collection of guitars. And the thing for me is I hate to have things collecting dust, guitars that aren't getting played. I think that's a sin and a crime. So, and just how do you deal with that? I mean, what do you do to keep your herd happy and creating music?
What
You
do you
just,
do?
what do I do?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have that many, but I just have over the years, there a few have come in, and if they don't end up in the rotation, I don't end up using them. They go out the door again, and
Yeah.
sometimes they'll be replaced by another one or not. I get really bummed out if there's a guitar that's not getting attention. So,
Yeah.
and I have 5 electrics right now, and every one of those gets proper attention. I mean, I use them all the time. I mean, I have some that get used for specific applications like recording and whatnot, but usually there's always they're always in rotation. Do you have one that you find? I mean, how does your management of your modest guitar collection work out? And let me ask a more pointed question. Do you find yourself like keying into one instrument and kind of carrying that route and using that one for a while and then going to another one? Or do you have like a guitar that's like your house guitar that you find yourself playing around the house more? How does that work?
Kind of like you described initially. I'll play a guitar and then I'll kind of rediscover it, and that'll be my guitar for a while. And then, I'll think of another one that isn't getting the love, and I'll play it and I'll go, damn, this is a cool one too. So yeah, I mean, I'll just gravitate towards one and play it for a while, and then move on to another one. But usually there are a couple probably in rotation at one time that I'll be bouncing between. But both you and I have modest guitar collections. I'm sure there are people out there that have a ton. It's something I think about too. And there are ones that I don't play probably ever at all, and those are the ones I should probably think about like getting rid of. But what happens with me is I'll play that guitar and then I'll kind of fall in love with it again and go, well, yeah, that was the one I was going to get rid of because I never play it, but now I'm playing it again and I want to keep it. So
Because you're playing all these other guitars, but to pick it up, like I'm going to dust this off and sell it. And it's like, oh, no way, man. This one is great. So
yeah,
that's kind of my whole point is like, how do you manage that? So you don't have anything sitting around that you don't want. And, and you still always have to keep, make room for more because there's always got to be one on the horizon at some point. So it's a horrible problem for guitar players. A lot of guitar players face the thing that I kind of wonder about how people manage is you'll see those people that like, check it out. I have 12 Telecasters.
right.
You know what I mean? And it's like, how do you manage that? I mean, I could see having, maybe I have a 50 style Blackguard and I have a 60 style Rosewood board and they have different sounds, but someone's got like 6 maple board Telecasters. Maybe some have humbuckers. I don't know. It's like, it's something that you do have to think about. And people will always say they're tools, they're like screwdrivers. And that's true. And if you're actually creating art and making a living off of it, they are tools, but they're much more than that. I mean,
Yeah.
they're actually like writing partners and things like that. So you get attached to them in ways that you would never get attached to a screwdriver or a wrench. But I'm a lot of people will say that, and it's true to a certain extent. But I mean, there's a lot more going on there. They're like, I hate to say as dorky as it is, they're like your little children or something. And my whole point of this is how do you keep all your children happy? You know, and then there's like string changes, you know, and like
Yeah,
setups, and you know, giving them the kind of attention that they need. I
exactly.
don't I don't go overboard cleaning my guitars. I don't think I've ever polished a guitar, but one thing I do dislike is dust. I'll
Yeah,
knock dust. I don't like dust on a guitar because it's just this guitar isn't getting played because why is it dusty?
yeah.
So I'll knock the dust off.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on the tool thing. To me, they're much more than tools, and I think to most people, they're much more than tools. Um, yeah, they do become your children, and then you get attached to them in so many different ways. But as tools, it is. I think it is cool to have a Tele or a Strat or a humbucker guitar or things like that, so that you have you're covering all the different ranges of sounds you can get out of a guitar. And there are guitars that will kind of cover a lot of ground on their own. But yeah, it's kind of nice to have different guitars that sound different and play a little different. It's funny when you were talking about dust on guitars or neglecting guitars. When I was young, way back when, I was at one of the local guitar shops taking my guitar in, and there was a guitar in there of one of the kind of prominent local players that I really kind of dug, and it was just dirty and dusty, and I was like, God, what, doesn't he ever clean his guitars? And he goes, well, the tech was like, how many guitars do you have? And I said, 2. And he goes, this guy has 15, and he plays, he tours, right? So it's like, he doesn't have time to clean all his guitars. So I thought it was really funny that I was being like, kind of like judgmental about how dirty his guitars were. But it was pretty funny.
Your kid has no shoes.
Exactly.
Probably up until like the early 2000s, I was a one guitar person. I had a Telecaster, and that was fine. I was okay with that. I actually managed to work like 3 years in a vintage guitar shop and only have one electric guitar. I don't know how I pulled that one off. It was probably poverty that saved me. So yeah, I only had one guitar, and then what got me into multiple guitars was the hankering for a humbucker sound, because I had the classic single coil Tele sound, and that's what sent me looking for my first additional guitar. I had my main electric, and I was looking for a humbucker guitar, and that's what started the whole thing.
And what'd you get?
I got that black, made in Japan, 1980s Les Paul Standard copy, which is
cool.
a great guitar. I still have it to this day. And then once you have the single coil humbucker thing dialed in, you're like, well, I guess I need a P90. And then, it's like, well, I have the single coil Tele sound, but I don't have a Stratocaster with that Stratocaster single coil sound. And then it's all over. And then you start getting into things like looking at Gretsch and Dan Electro and everything else. And it's like, that's when you have to start be mindful about, making sure your children are well cared for, I think.
And you don't neglect them. Well, I think it's funny. You mentioned working at a guitar shop, and that's a blessing and a curse, right? Because you get to see all of these cool guitars come in, but that's the blessing. The curse is you want to buy all of them, and you have to talk to the owner and say, hey, I know you're in the business of selling guitars, but I'd really like to buy that cool guitar that just came in. And the person's like, okay, great. How much money do you have? Well, none.
I kind of kicked myself for not coming up with some way to get a few more while I was down there, especially some of the things that just went through the roof since my time down there. But, oh, well, there's always other guitars.
Yeah, I bet though. I worked there briefly, but so luckily I didn't get, but I go in there a lot, and I see guitars that come in, and being friends with a person that has a shop too is another curse, because, but luckily I've never had I've just gone in and bought things outright and straight up, and not tried to like work some deal or anything. But
yeah, that's the way I am too. I like usually look at things and think they cost what they're asking for them. I'm not a big wheeler dealer kind of person. So I don't
either.
I don't do much haggling, but what is your right now, if you were going to like go play guitar right now around the house, what would you reach for?
Right now it's that V, man. I'm still
childhood V. Those childhood guitars are very important. So that's the guitar that you had back in the 80s.
Yep.
That was your main electric guitar, and then just a couple years ago or so, you found one online and revisited your childhood, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is, it's just a cool guitar. It's like being reminded of what great guitars those things are. It's just a slab of mahogany, thin body, really nice size neck for my hand, the cool humbuckers from that era, I think the T-tops or the other ones. But yeah, it's just a great guitar. Yeah.
It's a 1980 Flying V, correct?
Yep.
Cool. Black.
Yeah.
Just like the one you had in the 80s, right?
Totally. Just, a few months, it's only a few months away from the one I had, actually, which is cool. So that's the one I'm playing I'm playing it to death. And then I play that Antigua Strat too. Those are my main two guitars right now, that Antigua Strat. And you've got the hankering for a big head Strat, which I think is interesting.
It is interesting, especially because Strat has always been like my least favorite classic American guitar, but I always find myself thinking about when I have one, and now I'm like got Strat head over, a big headstock bullet truss rod 70s Stratocaster, kind of like black with all black trim at maple neck.
Yeah,
very specific thoughts that I find myself daydreaming about. But I was like, I am so much. I mean, I wonder if this happens to a lot of people my age or our age. Nostalgia drives so much of this hobby anymore. I find myself drawn to things that I was drawn to way back when I first started. And luckily that stuff happens to be really cool. Because like I've mentioned 1,000 times, I got my childhood guitar 3 years ago. I went back and found the guitar that was really influential for me when I was starting out. And I have that, and I love that. I play that all the time. But, it seems like everything I make, what purchase I make, whether it's a pedal, an amp, or a guitar, it's always something from the golden era of, the dawn of my guitar playing.
Yeah.
And that stuff just happens to be cool. I mean, those 70 Strats, if you find a good one, they're really cool guitars. They're totally different from a 50s or 60s Strat. They're bulkier, sometimes heavier. They're they're just weird, but they're also great. And there's a lot of cool music that was made by them. So I don't think there's anything wrong with lusting after one of those.
No, not at all. And I think that's another interesting thing about guitars is there's just so much attached to them. Like you're saying, they're just not inanimate objects. They're, they're works of art. They're musical instruments. They're, your children. There's this nostalgia attached to them. That's why I thought it was so cool. Like during the kind of the alt years of rock and stuff, where people were buying, and at the time, the cheap instruments were the 70s instruments. So people were buying like all these 70s guitars and amps, that were young alt rockers, and they were buying those things because they were cheap, but they also realized that they were cool instruments too. And so, these instruments again that were kind of like the lesser instruments, like, the Mustangs or the Music Masters or all that other stuff, or even like, the 70s Strats and things like that. People were buying them, or the Starcaster, for God's sake. That thing was, that thing couldn't get sold when it was was brand new,
Right.
So I think it was kind of cool to see that happen, that people were attracted to these kind of less desirable guitars. But now all these things are becoming, quote, vintage, right? So even the 70s instruments are.
Oh yeah. And the farther back you go in the 70s, like if you look at Stratocasters, 1970 is like 3 times what a 1979 is. So my process back before, you start out as a guitar player, and you get whatever you can get. If you're lucky, maybe, your parents help you out and you get something good. But for a lot of people like myself, the journey upward was kind of a struggle. And every time, for everything that you brought in, something would have to go. And that's the way it was for years. It's like, okay, I really want a new guitar. I need a new guitar. My playing has grown. This one, I've outgrown this guitar. So I'm going to take this guitar and I'm going to either sell it or trade it and get the next thing. So it was always this one in, one out. And once you become a bit of a guitar collector, then you have to grapple with, I know a lot of people will take like I need a new guitar. I'm gassing for a new guitar. So I found one that I really want. So I'm going to take this, and this, and get rid of this, and then throw some money in and get that. The way I've managed to do it is I try to just only get things I want. So I've been really good about keeping where I am and bringing something else in. You know what I mean? It's like, I guess if I was looking for the right thing, I might get rid of multiple guitars and put them towards something else. But I more than anything end up with a collection that is based on classic American guitar sounds.
Yeah.
So, if let's say I did get a Strat in, since I have a rosewood board Stratocaster, it would have to be a maple board. It would have to be maybe from a different era with a totally different sound. So I could justify having both. Otherwise, it's just like, oh, I want another Strat, get rid of this Strat. If any of that makes sense, it's just the way becoming collectors of guitars, there's little games that we play with ourselves and others around us to kind of like curate our collection.
Yeah. And that's what I do too. I try to do that. But what's fun, like I said before, though, it's funny because that's what I try to do. I try to just get all the guitars that I think, check the boxes of what I want. And then there'll be some guitars that I haven't played in forever. And then in my mind, I'll go, yeah, I should probably just get rid of those. I'll just do that. And then I'll play them and I'll go, no, I cannot get rid of this guitar. This is cool. Because I bought a later model Gretsch Silverjet that is a great, made in Japan. It's a great guitar. And I don't play it that often, but every time I pick it up, it's like, no, I don't want to sell this thing. So
plus,
go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, plus that guitar is like a classic guitar sound that you have, even if you're not playing it.
Yeah.
If you do, you have that sound at your disposal now.
Right.
And I even said, I don't like to have stuff I have around that I'm not playing, but there's something like I have a resonator that I don't play that often.
Yeah.
Hardly at all, but it's such a unique sounding instrument that I want to have it. My mandolin's the same way. I'll go months and months and months without touching my mandolin, but I would never get rid of it because when I need a mandolin sound, it's the only thing that's going to sound like that.
Yeah.
Because, so that Gretsch is like, it's got its own unique pickup, sound, construction, everything. So you have that cool rootsy sound at your disposal. So that one makes sense to hang on to. What else you got? Let's get rid of your guitars.
I've got that Starcaster that was another coveted guitar from my childhood that I have in my arsenal. And again, I don't play that very often, but every time I pick it up, it's like I don't want to get rid of it. And they reissued those, and I don't really care for the reissues. So
they didn't go all out on the reissue. They kind of cheaped out. They didn't build the right bridge.
I know.
Part of that guitar. So they just slapped, and the Gibson style with the stop LP.
Yeah.
And that was kind of lame. That the original bridge on those things is pretty cool and adds to the vibe of those guitars, I think.
I agree, and it's because they string through the body. It's of the semi-hollow body, which is crazy, and then that big, weird bridge. Yeah, but for me, again, those are all idiosyncrasies that I love about that weird guitar. But so I've got a couple Les Pauls, and then again, there's one that P90 Les Paul that I don't play it often, but I pick it up and it's like, I can't get rid of it, man. It's like, go ahead.
I said, if you do get rid of it, give it to me.
Oh, right. You'll be the first I call. You're on speed dial. But like you're saying, this is first world problems, and these are all great problems to have. But it is interesting because they do, for me, you and I are so much alike in terms of, I really get attached to these guitars. And so having that mindset of like, okay, well, I'm going to just circulate things through the old collection. It sounds good in theory, but again, once I reacquaint myself with some of these guitars, it's like, it's hard to let them go, even though I don't play them that often, so, but I'm sure a time will come where it's like, okay, you don't play this thing. You got to get rid of it,
Right.
And so I'm sure that time will come. I can feel it with a couple of them, like that Strat I have, that reissue Strat that we always talk about, that Sunburst. It's a great guitar, but I never play that thing. Never. And so.
Well, if you can turn something into something you never play into something you do play, that's great because you'll be inspired.
Yeah.
I think I don't have a problem because I don't have that many. I'm thinking if I had 15, I might start having problems. And again, this isn't a problem. It's really not a problem, but it's it's something I think about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want to be wasteful. I like the idea of cool guitars being out there for people to have access to. And if you're not using it, put it out there.
Yeah.
Kind of my thought. So luckily with 6 electrics and a couple acoustics and whatnot, I'm able to keep them all, I mean, one of my favorite guitars is my Telecaster, which was my main guitar forever. It's a 1990 52 reissue Telecaster.
Yeah.
That's probably the one I play the least around the house until I go to record something. And that's the first thing I reach to is on everything. If I was playing in a rootsy band, that would be the one I grab. But I've been really Gibson-y around the house for the last few years. So I've been playing mostly those, but
that's cool. Do you play your Junior a lot?
I drag it out every once in a while. If I'm playing live, which I haven't been able to do for the last year, that's the one I grab. It's either that or the other Gibson. But I have played it around the house. But there's a lot of times the Strat gets played around my house because, for what I'm usually doing on it, it's really clear and clean, and there's just something about it that I've been enjoying lately. It just depends. I mean, I have like 3 around the house that I play most of the time, and 2 of them are Gibsons, and one's a Fender.
Yeah. Well, another thing I enjoy doing, you and I do this, or we have in the past, where it's a kind of a cool way to circulate whatever guitars you have is to do a guitar swap. Like I've brought over like that Strat or stuff for you to just play on for a while and tinker around with. Right. And I think that's kind of fun to do. Like if you have buddies out there, just swap guitars, man, because that's kind of fun. So, I mean, that's another way to kind of like, maybe if there's a guitar that's getting neglected, you can loan it to somebody and then, and maybe they'll fall in love with it and steal it from you or break it. And then you're, you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Exactly. How many guitars do you have before we wrap this up?
Oh my gosh. Let's see. I probably got 10 or so.
Oh, that's not bad.
That's not too bad. Plus the mandolin and the acoustic. So maybe 12 or something like that. But it's not huge. But no. I'm lucky. I mean, you and I are lucky. We have decent. I mean, there are probably, that's another thing about, I kind of feel sorry for people like young musicians that don't have a lot of money and they want a really cool guitar. It's like, I guess nowadays you can get a cool reissue and stuff like that. But
yeah, it's a good time to be a guitar player. I think there's many options, and for good guitars for not a lot of money, I think pretty much just about if you like entered the bedrooms of every household in America, a huge percentage of these would have like a Stratocaster or something leaning on a guitar stand or on the wall or something. I think everybody, certainly way more affordable than when we started. I mean, it was much more of a struggle back then. But if we wouldn't have been such dumbasses, we would have probably like struggled a little harder and got something really, really cool, like an old Fender or an old Gibson, like student model or something, instead of like struggling to get like our first somewhat pricey, like high-end Japanese guitar or something, or entry-level Gibson or Fender.
Yeah.
Who knows? Time machine. If there's a time machine, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's cool about it too, is just kind of getting jazzed about that part of musical instruments and guitars, especially. I'd love to hear from other guitar players out there about their guitar or guitars or collections and how they view their children, neglecting them or giving them all equal attention. And I'd love to have a conversation with a bunch of people about that and see what their perception is about that.
So give Rick a call at 206-555-1212 and tell him what you think.
Please. Well, cool. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. And, keep your eyes peeled on social media. We like to post stuff. And I think we're going to post some stuff on the blog because it's been a while. But yeah, check us out on social media. Check us out on chrisandricktalkguitars.com. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
several